Yo, so Trump's gonna win the next election. Obviously, we all feel it. We all know it. His campaign has been marvelous. His podcast appearances have been great. They've been entertaining. I think in some parts he's been showing sides of him that he hasn't really shown before. And every the McDonald's thing was funny. It was great. It's awesome. I mean, the guy Donald Trump is currently he's the most famous person on earth. This is the most popular he's ever been. And it's all coming together here in the final stretches. I expect him to win quite big. I've always expected him to win quite big. I think he will win the popular vote. He will. He's got more black supporters than any Republican has had since the 60s. The era vote is going towards Trump. Trump's got, of course, everyone else. And Kamala, on the other hand, she's a terrible candidate. She never had a chance. She was the least, still is. She is the least liked vice president in history. Lesser liked than Dick Cheney. She has zero charisma. She has no charisma. She speaks to adults with the sarcasm that adults use when they're speaking to children. She has terrible speaking ability. She has none. She's no charisma whatsoever. And obviously, policy-wise, her ideas are stupid. And the American people aren't stupid enough to fall for them. They're dumb ideas. The whole idea of giving $25,000 to first-time home buyers is dumb because homes are just going to go up by $25,000. Taxing on capital gains tax, of course, that's the richest of the rich, but that's how the income tax was first implemented for the top 1%. Did you pay income taxes last year? Are you top 1%? No. So the capital gains tax will creep down to the rest of us. Please, like Kamala Harris, with the whole migrant situation, with that interview with Bret Baier, and Brett was asking him about, the whole migration issue. She didn't call it a problem. She just says it needs to be fixed. And she didn't say how it needs to be fixed. And, she calls for more border agents, but those border agents are nothing more but basically asylum processors. They're just going to be there to process asylum and migration status for these migrants to come in. She doesn't explain any of that. And no, the American people are fed up completely. And like I said, she has zero charisma. She speaks terribly. So Trump's going to win. Trump's going to win. And he'll win the popular vote, I think. We'll see. With that being said, what can we expect from Trump's first term or his second term? Well, first things first, as I already mentioned, the migrant issue, that needs to be addressed. And as he already spoke of, he's going to do what he can to have as many of them go back as possible. Of course, what has to be considered is American activity in Latin America. The CIA has been involved in Latin America since the 50s. They've been involved in the Colombian drug cartel since the 50s. And, they're everywhere. And so we need to basically do what we can to basically ensure stability in Latin America, to keep people from being enticed to walk thousands of miles to the border. So that's obviously the push effects. And then there's also the pull effect because we have our border wide open, so that needs to close. We need to close that, obviously. And we need to stop giving migrants welfare. Give them no welfare. Give them zero welfare. And that alone will incentivize many of them to go back. And you can probably do further things such as make it completely illegal to have employers employ them and enforce that law. Maybe make example out of some businesses that break it. And so if they can't find jobs and they're not being given welfare, most of them will go back on their own 2 feet. Um, and so, yeah, just closing the border and giving no more welfare will end this sort of pull effect that America has on the migrants coming into the United States. And then, whatever. But of course, there's going to be pushback to this idea. You're going to have the left saying, oh, it's going to cause a humanitarian issue because there's 10 to 15, maybe 20 million of them here. And if 10 million are trying to go back home at the same time because they can't get a job and they're not getting any welfare, then, you're going to have a huge bottleneck and so forth and so on. So maybe the idea I just gave ain't too realistic, but something to that effect I expect Donald Trump to do. The next big issue is obviously what's going on in Ukraine and in Israel. Trump has already said he would end the Ukrainian war before he's president, and I'm going to hold him up to that. Ukraine stands no chance. Ukraine stands no chance. If you know anything about the Ukraine situation, you would know that Biden's entire goal with Ukraine is to exhaust Russia of manpower and of resources. And you do that the longer the war goes on. You do that fully if you fight to the last Ukrainian man. Ideally, Harris and Biden want Ukraine to fight till the last Ukrainian man. If not, get NATO troops in there to continue to have Russia fight and put effort, manpower, and resources into this war. That's ridiculous. That's absurd. Why are we doing that? But Biden's own people said this. And so I don't know what the goal is with that, but I don't think war is good for anybody. War is terrible for the people. It is terrible for the people. It's been terrible for Ukraine. Ukraine's going to lose a chunk of their country. And they didn't have to. That's what's sad about it. Because Russia and Ukraine had a deal on the table the first month the war started. And Boris Johnson, Britain Prime Minister, went to Ukraine and squashed the deal. But anyways, so yeah, I expect Trump to end the war. And it's gonna, Russia's gonna gain territory. Duh. They've been fighting for 3 fucking years. You kidding me? Of course they're gonna gain territory. They're going to gain territory. Like, if we settled 3 years ago, they wouldn't have gained territory. But we didn't settle 3 years ago. They've been fighting. They've been putting all this effort. They expect to get some gains out of it. And they've had gains out of it. They expect to keep them. And they will. That's just how it is. Unless you guys want the war to go on. You want it to go on and then eventually have NATO fight you, Russia? And then it's like Russia hasn't had a direct fight with any major European or Western power since well, I guess World War II. Yeah, obviously with Germany, duh. I was trying to think except for Germany. But yeah, since World War II. So, my gosh, can you imagine? Anyways, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if y'all are fans of that. Harris doesn't give a shit. She would be more than happy to have something like this as long as she's fine. And her puppet masters absolutely would want an escalated war. Of course. They're not the ones dying. They want the war so that they can drive Russia out and then basically consolidate all power in the Eastern Europe. Anyways, and that can be, they don't mind having devastation to make that happen. In fact, the more devastation, the better. The more devastation, the more opportunity there's to rebuild in their own image. Anyways, so I expect Trump to do something there with Ukraine and Russia and that war to get the best deal he can. I expect him to use whatever leverage he can and to settle this diplomatically. I'm not an expert, by the way. And then with Israel, oh my God, Israel, dude. All right, with Israel's a menace. They are. October 7th. Come on. They allowed October 7th to happen. I know that would probably get someone in big trouble for saying that, but they were told by Egypt. They were told by Egypt, you're going to have a huge attack on your border. And then I heard people go, well, Israel, they always receive those kinds of threats. Okay, and then they're going to have a concert right at the border? And then when they get attacked, oh, sorry about that. Reinforcement, maybe that's the act of God or something. Like, when they do get attacked by Hamas, reinforcement takes hours? Like, terrible response? And then many of those that died on October 7th were killed, like hundreds that died, were killed by IDF soldiers. And then that event justifies the killing of 50,000 in Gaza. And now there's a war going on in Lebanon. This is all part of the extremist Zionist agenda to have the greater Israeli nation. I don't know if it's extremist or not. Actually, that's probably the original Zionist agenda. Anyways, so what should be expected of Trump when it comes to Israel? Well, interesting about Trump, he has called out Benjamin Netanyahu. He called him out, Netanyahu. He called him out when apparently America and the America and Israel had like a conjoined sort of like military operation or something. And then what ended up happening, they planned it out and everything. And Trump said this, that right before they were set to launch, literally the minute before, Netanyahu pulls out and puts Trump in a situation, and America in a situation where they had to carry out this military operation on their own without Israel help. And Trump called out Benjamin Netanyahu publicly for this. So I do appreciate that. And I think all of you, left-wing Queers for Gaza people should at least hear that and be like, oh, okay. Because Kamala, you don't hear anything encouraging, from your perspective, from her about that. But Trump, what could be expected? It's just my opinion with the Israel and Palestine. I mean, it's just, you have, last we heard, 3 million people in Gaza, 5 million people or so in the West Bank. And, the people in Gaza live in prison. It's a prison camp. It's an open-air prison camp. It's terrible. I mean, is that sustainable? No, it's not. That's not sustainable. And Israel obviously knows this. Man, don't get me started on Israel. Because I think my estimation is Netanyahu, he financed Hamas. He gave them money. One of the first things he did when he became prime minister was give Hamas money. He empowered Hamas. This is a fact. I've heard Israelis say this, and their justification is Netanyahu thought they can be bought out. No, Netanyahu put Hamas in the position that they are in because Netanyahu himself does not want a two-state solution. He doesn't want to negotiate a two-state solution. So you put an organization that is infeasible as a negotiating partner for peace so that you don't have the two-state solution. And it's just like I said earlier, this Netanyahu's a menace. But anyways, the Palestinians, they do need their own country. They need their own country. They need their own country. And I think that, this is just ridiculous. If the people in Gaza are given the opportunity to live in a decent Middle Eastern country, would they be violent? I mean, the rest of the Arabs aren't. Saudi Arabians aren't like that. I'm ignorant maybe. I don't know, if they just have their own state that can, that could be self-determinate to some extent. That sounds more sustainable. I mean, you have 8 million people and they need somewhere to live. They need somewhere to be. So I don't know what Israel's plan is with this. It's where's this going? It's It's the greater Israel concept. That's what they want. They want to manifest that. Trump, interestingly, Truman, who was the president of the United States during the foundation of Israel in 1947-48, he complained about Israel. He said Israel wanted everything. And then Truman said there are 7 million Arabs living there. And so America has to stand up to Israel. And I hope Trump stands up to Israel. And I have hope of that because of him calling out Benjamin Netanyahu publicly. And so someone needs to stand up to Israel to end this freaking annihilation of Gaza. And when it comes to Hamas, do what you can to get them out. Yes. At the same time, start preparing to basically do something about the Palestinian people. And that something should be giving them the opportunity to have a decent place to live in. That sounds a lot more sustainable than an open-air prison camp that they have in Gaza. And I hope that Trump pushes towards that. The way, Israel's biggest enemy is Iran. And I don't know. I like the way that, Kamala said that Iran is the biggest adversary of America, which is ridiculous because, there's China and there's Russia. That's what she said. Trump, on the other hand, said he wants Iran to do well. And Trump said that he was going to approach at least Iran to be part of the Abraham Accords, which is like the agreement that Saudi Arabia has with Israel. And Trump was saying he had leverage with on Iran because of the sanctions and their economic situation and so forth and so on. And that's something I want to hear from my president. Because if somehow Iran enters the Abraham Accords like Trump suggested, wouldn't that end much of the conflict in the Middle East? So anyways, what I'm hoping for is that Trump goes in that direction. What I expect is for Trump to at least go somewhat in that direction and not be too much of a puppet of Israel. Of course, every president has some sort of bound to Israel for some reason.